All right. Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Empire Interviews. I'm really excited about this one. I'll be talking to Sabina. She is a marketing whiz expert. And so we're going to be talking about Web3 marketing, why it's so bad, and her journey in crypto. It's going to be a blast. So thank you all for joining us. All right. Hey there, Sabina. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to kind of come and have this conversation with you, John. So, firstly, just want to say thank you and thank you to all the listeners that will hopefully join and listen to us. And I'll just give you a very short overview, a little bit about myself. So, I've been in marketing now probably about almost 18 and a half slash towards 19 years. So, traditionally was in Web 2 and then moved over to Web 3.
That's fantastic. So tell me about some of that. What were some of your biggest marketing experiences? And then, like, tell me about some of the ones that were the most memorable, like career wise.
Well, so this is a hard one. I think I've generally been quite blessed in my career. So a lot of people don't know this. So I'll share an interesting fact. I actually started off as a developer back in the days. I used to be a coder. I think I can probably code. So I actually used to be a developer and I worked in traditional like agencies, so your AKQA, and did a lot of, I was blessed with a lot of clients. So from your FMGs to your beauty products to cleaning products, you name it. So I was really fortunate in terms of having such a vast amount of different clients. One of a project that still sticks quite close to my heart, and I can talk about the fancy car products I worked on, but I'm not. I'm going to pick this one because I think this was a bit more of a challenging one and one that's memorable for me. So I don't know if you know about Kellogg's. Kellogg's is a cereal in the UK and predominantly in Europe. And every so often they always do a redemption platform, which basically means a child can get like a little toy or some sort of collectible, so it gives them a little bit of an incentive. So the task I was given was to try and educate children where the produce comes from. So a lot of people don't know that actually Kellogg's invest a lot with local farmers, so it's something that people don't really look at. So they kind of came to my team and were like, right, we need to make this a really fun educational element. How do you make breakfast time, which can be a bit challenging for parents, get that into a bit more of an informative and educational and fun way to get learning to be really interesting. So I actually created this redemption platform across, I think, 32 or 26 countries, so translated across the board. We had these little cute little characters. So I can't remember the character. I think it was like Kellogg's.
I keep thinking of, I think it was what, Tony the Tiger.
Yes.
They're great.
Oh gosh, you are really right. So there was the monkey, there was the tiger, and there was two others. There was a bee and there was one other. I can't remember. So you would actually grow little, they were like seed heads. So you would grow little crests, you would grow little parsley. I mean, to be fair, they were like literally this titchy. They were the most cutest things ever. And yeah, it became such a success. It was a challenging task because I had to come up with the look and feel. We had done translation across, and I think I said 26 or 20 or 32 countries. I had won best designer of that year and had won a prize. It was one of the most fulfilling things because what it proved was not only did it hit the sales, we hit all targets, but it actually became super educational. And we found that a lot of kids did go in and interact with websites. So obviously we track a lot of site clicks, and we found that actually the dwell time was a lot longer than anticipated. So it was a huge success. Not your traditional one that I would, people would say if they look at my career, like, would you pick that one? I mean, like I said, I've worked for some amazing clients, but I think that one for me touched me a lot just purely because it was an educational aspect. And I do think children are the future of this generation. So if we can get them in early, educate them, whether it's Web 2, Web 3, that for me was much more meaningful than, like I said, Audi, which is another client that I did work for as well.
That's amazing. 100%. So like I will say in Web3 and crypto, one of the things that I'm most excited about, my father is a career professor, right? Education. My mom has always been in things around that. And then so my thing. I've always enjoyed video games. So I'm excited to see the combination of this like learn to earn type ecosystems that can come out of crypto and education. I think that we're getting to a world where most information is derived from the internet. Like most true good information comes from the internet. So to have a learning system where that's combined, where instead of kids even necessarily having to go to school, but having like a whole virtual experience that can teach you literally everything, show you literally anything. I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be pretty crazy with the education side. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I've got 9 nephew and nieces, so I always have a bit of heart because I feel I still keep young because they're all such different ages. And it's fascinating. The younger they get in, they really understand technology. So, for example, one of my nephew, Aiden, will just know where to click skip, so they skip the advert. So I think their brains are much more advanced than I would say myself when I was younger at that age. So I think this is actually a prime time when we think about like tokenization, or if you want to reward them, like you get 5 stars and then you unlock a level and you can go to the next one, because gamification, I think, brings a fun element. It doesn't feel like it's a chore learning. And I think if you can remove the chore from learning and create a fun experience, whether it's, oh, I'm doing an interaction with my friend abroad, or someone else, or over the phone, because you think about gaming as a whole, I mean, that's a whole other industry that I'm super fascinated about. And I think it's almost unmatched in terms of how much the kids are like developing in terms of gaming and problem solving. And if you can marry the two with education and gaming, I do think that kids, we can give them the right tools to really help them develop in a much more profound way than what traditional way of learning was. I don't think we've tapped it fully, because I think technology and gaming especially, it's moving so fast, much faster than I think humans can comprehend. And I think that's slightly where the challenge is, right? It's developing so quickly. By the time you've developed one product, you've already got another one. I mean, when we think about, especially what was the recent one, Sora. So we think about AI, and jumping a little bit, like Sora kind of just it was just mind blowing. I think when I saw that, I was like, it also being a creative, I was like, well, I have a lot of debates within my own network where people are like, our jobs are going to go. And I was like, I don't think it will. I think there's an element of it will just help efficiency. I don't think it will ever go. I think it's an interesting one, because I think with me, because of my background, I can tell when something is computer generated, even if it's like amazing. I think it's just my eye, I can tell. So I know if something's if it is a Sora, or if it's a ChatGPT written, like you can kind of tell. I don't think computer has gone fully, but you do need humans to prompt that. So I don't think it's an element that you'll completely go, but I think it's like, how can we find a beautiful synergy between the two to kind of develop that? But I do think like the gaming factor and just learning is something. I mean, like I said, I've got a 2-year-old nephew, and some of the stuff he's watching, I mean, I feel sometimes I'm going a little bit crazy, because it's these very short, very quick, and I'm like, how are kids consuming it? But I realize it works for them. The bright colors, the little over animated characters, and overly obnoxious, or the laughter has to be 10 times more than what a human would do, because it's stuff that they can. So I find that massively helps me when I'm looking at marketing, for example. I'm going to be fully like transparent. I find, because of my surroundings, my upbringing, I think I pull it all into what I do, my job. So whether it's, marketing for, luxury brands, or whether it's like educational element, I think that's one key thing. Like blockchain and education is probably one of the ones I found, especially on X. We've had a lot of people like comment where like, I really want to get into it, but I don't understand all of the acronyms, and how do you explain it to a 5-year-old, which is true. I always say, if you can educate, if you can explain blockchain as a whole to a 5-year-old and a 90-year-old, you've won. I don't think we've got there yet. I can explain, and I think that's the key. Like, can you explain it to a 5-year-old? Can you explain it to a 90-year-old? Because the people in the space, we get it, and we're super excited, right? There's this exciting bubble, and we're like, we want more people to join that bubble, and it's really hard to try and explain it, because every time technology is evolving and it's changing. By the time I've, explained one thing, I'll have my friend in my next, meet up for going for dinner, but like, there's this other thing that happened. I'm like, oh yeah, but that's changed, and it's kind of happened here. It's one of the most, I think, fastest agile industry, I would probably have to say, I mean, I've worked in, Facebook, I was there for 3 years, Meta, sorry, a tech firm, and it's very different to Web3. I cannot explain it. When people always say, like, how does it feel working with it? I can't explain it. It feels
See,
like
that is
yeah,
actually one of my biggest questions. Like, kind of, what do you feel like is the biggest challenge or difference between Web 2 marketing
yeah,
and then Web 3 marketing? Because for me, right, from my smooth brain perspective, I feel like with blockchain and with Web 3, the biggest problem is everybody tries so hard to say Web3 and blockchain when in reality it's kind of like you have to explain how something solves a problem
yeah,
without mentioning that. It's kind of like when you're talking about a television that has incredibly great quality of like, 4K and all this, right? 4K is a super easy concept. It's very high definition. But like if you go into like how the actual screen works and the LED behind that, and that's your pitch is, superior technology and all this stuff, the majority of people are lost at that point. Once you start going into how the 4K television works
yeah.
and the technical aspects, so I would like a little bit of your perspective on the Web 2 versus Web 3, right?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons, and I'm obviously going to just base this on my personal experience. So like I said, it's not right and wrong, and people may disagree, which is totally fine. I find there is a lack of real understanding of marketing in Web3. I think what happened with Web3, especially with crypto, it kind of boomed, and there was just such an excitement. So it's almost like you have a growth spurt, but what's happened is the growth spurts happen, but then the marketing's kind of been left behind.
You have the growing pains.
Yeah, as you'll get the growing pains. And I find with Web 2, having worked in, I've worked in Samsung as well. So I've led like product teams. So having worked in quite a few different industries, I do find there's a bit more of an established, almost a traditional tier of what marketing is. And I know I can't say too much about like companies and names, but obviously I know a lot of people within the Web3 space. I find sometimes people get very fixated on a persona. So you can only be a marketing lead if you have X followers and you're famous and you fit a mold. But in reality, it's all fluff, right? You can be a salesperson and talk and have all those followers, whether they're brought or not. But can you execute? And I think that's the difference of understanding what marketing is. Marketing is not about just making something looking pretty, right? You can make something look pretty and it's not that. It's what's the KPI? What's the end goal? Do we want to get like an early adoption product and we want to enroll developers? And do we want the conversion to be at the end where they're going to bring in another mass, let's say another 1K developers and they start building? What's the end goal? Marketing is not a quick fix. I think a lot of people think, oh, you have a marketing expert come in and they're going to fix all problems. It doesn't work like that. There needs to be levels and balances in that. There is so many different tiers of understanding marketing. I think just going back to kind of what you said about the education element, it kind of goes a bit, you can get very lost within the space within marketing and within Web3 where things are so exciting and you kind of see like, oh, Solana's doing this and, Bitcoin, Binance is doing this or like, everyone's doing this. And like, what is the right kind of phase? What I find, this is my personal take of what's missing within the Web3 is actual traditional marketing and really having experts. I mean, I know there are experts within the space and I'm not taking away from people, but I do see there's a lack of marketing experts. I think that's the one thing I have noticed from going to events, talking to people. I've met so many amazing, quite young enthusiasts. And I think there's a beautiful passion and I think that's great. What enthusiasts won't have is the experience that you can only get from someone who has that experience. And I think Web 2 brings those traditional experiences and amplifies Web3. I do not think you can be just a Web3 person and understand full marketing. I know I probably get people hating me on saying this, but like I said, I come from like stats. So a lot of the stuff when I was at Facebook, they kind of drilled in our head is in order to like prove things, you got to show data points. So anything when I would bring up to the table, like I want to try this initiative, unless I can come back and prove via numbers, I failed as a leader and, in marketing. So I always say I back things with things, and sometimes things don't work, whether it's the economy or things have changed, and there's ways you can pivot. But I do think the education element is probably the biggest thing we need to tackle within Web3. I think so much content is out there and you can get lost. Let's think about a young enthusiast who really wants to come in. What blockchain do they go into? Everything is, there's so much hype in different blockchains. The one thing I wish, and maybe it's because of my age, I'm a little, and I'm slightly different in terms of the younger generation. What I wish we can remove, and I've seen a lot on Twitter. So I prefer saying Twitter. I'm old school, but I know it's X. Is almost the beef between different blockchains, and I just feel like we need to talk about how we can work in collaboration, because a win for one entity is a win for another. A lot of people are afraid about Web3. I think that's the reason why when you were talking about the 4K TV and explaining it, people get a bit frazzled and lost because they don't understand, it's too technical for them. So that fear kind of is like, well, I would rather stick to my safety zone because that's comfortable than go into that fear bit. But then if we get all of these different entities within the Web3 work together, if it's a win for, as soon as there's one win for one company, it's almost like that's your case study to bring in investors, to bring in partnership for the next. So that's the one thing I feel that I do feel a little bit disappointed with some of the Web3 community. I'm not going to mention names, but I mean, obviously I get tagged and I read a lot of the stuff and I'm like, but I do put it down to age, because a lot of these, I guess, conflicts comes from, I think, a lack of immaturity within experience within Web3, within traditional marketing. And I think that's the only difference. I think traditional marketing background, someone who understands, like my days was very different in terms of marketing and what you had, like we really have to prove a lot. You got to go through the full funnel. It's not just about, how many people likes are not going to equate to the final output. It's always
that's not necessarily conversion. Just interactions and impressions are not necessarily conversions. I have a friend who does really good on like, I guess, SEO marketing, like email marketing and all this stuff, and that's his whole thing. And so what he would always say anytime I would say anything or anytime I'm doing anything, he's like, yeah, but do you have buyers? And so it's a good question. I did want to touch on something that you said just now, and I will definitely call some of those people out in a certain sense. But I felt like recently in the news, there's been this huge push for the Bitcoin reserve, right? A Bitcoin reserve, and the president of the United States came out with an executive order for a crypto stockpile. There were certain groups of people that were so angry that instead of it just being a Bitcoin reserve, there's now a whole bunch of different blockchains, American-made blockchains that are going to be held by the National Treasury. And so like that was definitely that moment for me where I saw this mass immaturity. Like you just heard the president of the United States now saying, giving the green light to crypto in general, like giving the green light to crypto, but also saying that the nation is going to hold a stockpile of a whole bunch of different blockchains. And there were people that are angry. Like that's the most exciting thing for this industry as far as legitimizing it from any standpoint, because one of the biggest world leaders making a statement like this, all of the other world leaders will follow. Right?
I think there's two sides to that. So I think, I'm not defending anybody. I'm very much always been about collaboration. I think the slight hostility or the negativeness, I think usually comes from, I'm making assumptions, but I feel based on my interactions with people within the community is from them feeling like they've put their blood and sweat into something that they feel it's theirs. They feel like they own it, when in reality it's not. Because if you can make something that's mass and amazing for the whole world, I mean, let's think about the whole purpose of like crypto and what people want. We want a decentralized world. We want to own our own assets. Like we all want to be able to own something where the government is not owning our assets and what's in my bank account. Like, all of this, and we want to make life easier. So we remind each other like what the real purpose of it. It really is one dream and one goal for every entity. So I think sometimes people get very lost because, and I totally get it, they're probably working hours and, they're like, well, we've built something and we've created this unity. And I get it, based on politics and history, usually when you have a leader, sometimes people get greedy and decisions gets made, and then things are not as decentralized, and then governance is not, people get buyed out or brought out, sorry, or there's influence, and it's like, how do you make it safe, democracy, and make it safe? The reality is you're never gonna get it 100%. We're not there yet. However, if we can do the small steps to get to that goal, it's a small win, but it's a win for all of us. Whether it's a win for a different entity, we should applaud it and be like, right, we should now be more motivated to try and see how we can, amplify, or maybe we do a collaboration, because it will support us and in some sense help us, whether it's through marketing. So if let's say hypothetically, you've got a smaller entity that isn't well known, and you can, collaborate with a slightly larger entity, and you get that global platform because you'll have their followers and their listeners and their developers and their community, kind of the ecosystem kind of merging and, mixing those ecosystems. I think it's
kind
a
of like
thing,
the pay
right?
it forward, sort of like the pay it forward effect,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
you should, if you're doing something cool in the space, you should collaborate with 3 other projects that are maybe a little smaller than yourself, and that grows your influence. It grows the people that know about you, and marketing and building. If we're trying to build something that's forever, that's definitely the way to go. I love that. So I really love that this conversation is so good. I feel like we could go on, honestly, for many, many hours, because I'm really enjoying your perspective and your insight. One of the things that you kind of questions you inspired just now is, okay, so you mentioned that you have a developing background, right? Which, a lot of people wouldn't guess that, right? Just right off the bat. You've been in a lot of these spaces, and I've seen you speak at different events and stuff about a lot of technical things, a lot of marketing, but the developing background is really awesome and impressive. I wanted to ask, is there something that you either yourself wish that you could build, or that you aspire, really hope to see somebody else build, I guess, in the near term? Because I think there's so many things, and they're marketed all kinds of different ways. Just last night on our live stream, we were talking about how now everybody's talking about RWAs, the real world assets. But last cycle, the thing that was exciting was supply chain management, which is basically RWAs, just having a digital way that you can track all these different things in a system. So it's the same thing. I would argue that that's kind of like a marketing twist on the same thing, right? Same as like AI and smart contracts, right? Smart contracts and AI can be interchangeable depending on how you're building things. So what is it that you think is exciting, that you hope to see, that you want to see built?
I mean, I know one of the biggest trend now is the AI element, and that's something I've been super fascinated about, is how AI can enhance and be a benefit, not a fear factor. But going back to like, if I was able to build something, there is a passion project that I've been focusing on, and I'll be honest, I just don't have the time to kind of invest in it. So those that don't know much about you, I'm probably going to disclose quite a lot. So I do have ADHD and I'm slightly dyslexic. So I didn't know this till quite later in life. I'm also a lefty. Don't think that is a reason to be anything different. So I actually have more energy as I age, which is a very bizarre thing. And I have 1,000 ideas and I can function when it's quiet. So one thing that failed me in my career, I would say, is a lack of tools or feeling supported in that space for the ADHD and dyslexic, and a problem. Well, when I solve a problem, it's almost harder for me, and I don't think like from here to there. It's kind of like scattered around, and that's kind of how my brain works. I think it works brilliantly. Give me a very mundane, simple task, and I will really struggle. So I kind of navigated my career. No glass ceiling. I was pretty much the only female in my career. And I think one thing that I do see a lack of space is creating a platform somewhere, similar to if you think about ecosystem. create an ecosystem for those people who feel a little bit indifferent, or and it's okay that if we're a bit more challenged in terms of how we talk or how we struggle through doing a problem. So without mentioning names, I have a very good friend of mine who I worked out, like we worked together, and later I realized, we were very similar but not similar. And I found out that he also had, he was also on the spectrum. He had ADHD. And I was like, this explains it. And my close friends, networks of friends, most of us have ADHD. And I was like, we somehow found each other. But there is no tools out there. You've got somewhat a sector with the young Gen Z who are currently now, I think there's a big boom about ADHD, or I have something and it's a trend and it's a cool thing. I'm not talking about that. Let's remove that. I'm talking about within marketing where it's been a massive struggle. Like my career, we can talk for hours, but my career hasn't been easy. But the tools that I wish I had was someone being able to explain, or even going back to what you said about a game development, somewhere where if it's a tool or a gamification where I have an app and I can unlock something, kind of helps me understand that's my brain and that's how my brain functions. So I'll give you an example because it's really hard to explain because the ADHD is so different for different people. So let's just say I've done this before. So I've had to I went to my room to go and collect something. I need to go do something. Then I went to my room and I noticed, one of my shoes there, but the other shoe wasn't there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start organizing. Then I noticed, my cupboard needs to be done. And I also have OCD. And my cupboard is like all color coordinated. I absolutely love it. It's just a very weird thing. So I started getting distracted and doing all these other things. And then I never got back to the original task. So what I would love is tools where if I was able to have like an app that kind of helps, or have a community that can share their personal stories, and where I feel like actually I'm not just the weird one by myself, and there is a big community there, and how we navigating, a day-to-day job, which is actually a lot more challenging when someone gives us a problem versus, for example, being a creative. I'm a night owl, so I will actually sometimes I'll be like 2 a.m. I'll come up with the best idea. Give me 3 months to work on something. Sometimes I'll work on it. I have worked on projects where 3 months and I'm like, okay, it's good. The client wants X, Y, and Z. And then literally probably the weekend before, I would be like, oh no, just light bulb moment, come up with a different idea. And some of my best work, and I don't know why it works, that's Sod's Law. I think a lot of people can relate to this. Some of my best work has been actually the last minute rush jobs where I've not overthought about it, and it's like it been a light bulb moment, and I'm like, right, I need to do it. So what I would love to do is, and I don't know I have Googled and I've researched a little bit about this, because last year I was really invested in trying to see if there is some sort of tool. And there's loads of people talking, for example, on TikTok, there's a lot of creators who talk about these issues and how you can understand. So for example, like I said, blockchain, or just general consumption of understanding technical language. Sometimes my brain, like if I read a paragraph or a book, like a page, I will have to read it 5-10 times and I still may not understand it. So is there a tool to explain to me about like Web3? When I was at my last job, there was a lot of acronyms thrown at me, and we were like, there's all these products. And I was like, what does this mean? And I think one of the things I was really confused about, I think I was at a dinner table, it was probably my second week when I joined this company, and they were talking about governance. And I'm going to be very honest, I was like, what are they on about? And I literally was sitting in that table thinking, oh, this is because they're all American. I was like, this must be an American. I literally was like, this is an American thing, because I was the only British person there. And I was like, spoke to my friends, I'm like, I knew about Web3, but they keep going on about governance, and guess American politics is a big thing. And it just showed that I was slightly ignorant, but also my brain, I just could not understand because it was the language barrier. But then I started kind of deep diving, and I had read into a little bit more, because obviously Web3 is so big, but when you work for one company, you really got to understand how their products work and how their technical language works versus what's going around. Because marketing is not about, I'm just going to be selling, for example, my phone. It's not selling this phone. I have to know what the best tools are around, what's the Google phone, Apple phone, Samsung phone. I need to know what's happening around, because I need to be 5 steps ahead of, my marketing plan. And a lot of the stuff does go on assumptions. We use, I look at statistics, I look at data, so I can somewhat predict what works based on past history. But most of the stuff is with marketing is you have to somewhat predict that when we're doing a case study, or we're doing a project or a campaign, which would run from Q1 to Q4. So that's like, 3 months in a year, or it could be Q1 to Q2. And you have to be like, right, once it's not a case of, oh, this project finishes in Q2, you need to already have the other 5 projects, marketing projects at the background. So I don't think people always realize that marketing is like, oh, you've done this, huge success, clap, and it's amazing. No, because you have to really think about the previous one, and you have to have all those assets ready. So it's not just coming up with a strategy plan. I also do creative. So I would lead, my previous job, I was leading, the creative team, the web development team. I did the social media team, did all the events, and it was a lot of pieces. I would say it's a lot of jigsaw, and I can't do one thing in marketing. And, I would say every company, like all of those entities, whether it's the product team, the developers, the writers, everyone contributes, and you can't have one team do one thing and not attribute to the other teams. That's why I would say collaboration is so key, because technically it will work if we're a jigsaw and we all kind of connect together. When you start building one above the other, it never works. So I come from a slight different way of thinking, and that partly is because of my history working within marketing as a whole, like having some very interesting experiences. I'm being very political in how I say this, and learning from, I guess, bad managers. I can say that, you become the best manager when you learn from what's wrong when other people lead.
Yeah.
And I don't know if many people, people always, when I've met people and people say very humbling things, and I'm very much, I disregard it, not because I don't appreciate it. I think it's because I've never looked at myself as being a leader. I never looked at myself as being that glass ceiling. And I'm slightly going a bit off tangent here, but I remember when I was at Facebook and I had spoken, I had to do a presentation, and it was with a local school not far from the Meta office. And apparently it's like one of the most deprived, poor income families. So what they do is once a year, they'll bring those kids into school, and then you kind of educate them about the technology and what technology can do. So for example, Facebook is very big for small businesses in more in the Southeast Asian continents, small businesses versus like the West, which a lot of people don't know. And I remember when I did that talk, I had some of these kids come up to me, and they were like, oh, tell us a bit about your background and stuff. And they were shocked. Like, I've never seen someone like you in a position and like this. So for us to see someone like us there, and I think I actually did cry because I was like so humbled, because I never put myself there. And I somehow have navigated my career in this way. I've never looked to say I want to be a leader or a manager. I've always been about a collaboration. I have a zero ego policy. I always say you learn more from the younger generation. So when I led quite a big team, I would always be like, I'm learning from everybody. And if I can get value from all my team members, because it is a contribution, then I win. I'm always about let your team win. That is naturally a win for you. It's not about a leader to come forward and be like, I'm the one that's winning. So yeah, I find it's a fascinating space with, I've been looking into kind of like, since Trump kind of became president, and you had the meme coin and all of that whole drama and things, it's been quite an entertaining show. Like, not, I feel sorry for people who've lost out, but it's been quite interesting because everyone's kind of on this hope of like prediction, right? Like, what's going to happen? Is it going to happen? I think the fact
what's going to happen next?
Yeah, but I think the fact that he's given the green light, like he believes in crypto, and I think rather than jump, like we need to learn to walk before we run, right? And I think there are some amazing projects, like thousands of projects, to be fair. Like the amount of projects I've seen people talk about, and people sometimes, send me messages like, can I get your opinion on this? Or we're doing this, would you have, if you get a chance to have a look at it? And people are doing amazing things. There is this, people are not getting funding, and I totally get that, that sometimes the projects are cut short, but there's some fascinating projects out there. What I would love is if there's a way, if you can get a few smaller entities to join together and be like, right, we can give them funding and then give them the tools to succeed. I think that's what it is give the tools for these people to succeed, because a win for them is a win for the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to kind of focus on, because it's about I would say this is about the future legacy, because I would probably be around when, in the future when everything is going to be all like crypto, and you're not going to have the old system and stuff, and we'll probably move to like Web4 and whatnot. So it's like, what can we do now to help establish that and create a better future for all of us, and that one goal? Because I think it's human nature where people become a little bit greedy and they kind of forget, and people want power. I always say it's a men thing versus a woman. I'm gonna get hate on this, but
You're good. It definitely is. It is kind of an ego thing. You know what I mean? People, yeah, they want everybody to look at them, right?
yeah,
And then
and
that's the whole problem, is like, we need to cultivate a culture and a system where it's not everybody look at us. It's like everybody look at what we've accomplished together.
yeah,
100%. I am going to stop you and touch on several different things that I really loved that you said in general. But one, the ADHD thing, 100%. I actually, yeah, that's my thing. It is a superpower in a certain sense,
yeah,
because it gives you the ability to think very differently and a lot quicker than a lot of other people. But sometimes there's a lot of noise because you're thinking about a whole lot of things all at the same time. So it gives you the superpower of the future sight, but it takes a special person to be able to distinguish the signal from the noise.
yeah.
And I also wanted to say is there's actually so my dad, his actual special area was special education, right? So we actually joke that like that was the reason why he studied 72 years special education, is because he knew that he was going to have me as a child, right? But one of the things that I've learned that I think is really interesting that you might enjoy is there's a specific thing called Carol Dweck's mindset theory. And so mindset theory is something that I think needs to be taught in every school. But mindset theory basically forces the individual to learn about themselves, how they process things, how they learn, and then basically to take your weaknesses and like find a way to either cope with your weaknesses or
Yeah.
just 100% lean on only your strengths. So it kind of allows people to adjust the way that they live their life in order to fall on their strengths and kind of like, ignore their weaknesses. If you're not a good at like artist, drawing things, you probably, there's certain people that they live their whole life and do a career of doing the things that they're not gifted at. And so this is why Carol Dweck's mindset theory is kind of special, because it's sort of like what you're good at, do that. And I love that you said that, because that resonated with me about ADHD and how that works. Is like people
And
often say,
there's
they don't understand how I do or what I do certain things. It's like, yeah, me neither. But, it works for me most of the time.
I mean, firstly, please do send me the name of that again, because I will
I
forget
will.
even though you told me. Because I agree. I think it can be a superpower, but then there's that whole thing what you said about the noise and understanding and coping. Because I think it took me a very long time to where I am now, and I guess that's from age and experience, where I'm very decisive and I know exactly what to do when I'm leading like big teams, and completely opposite to my personal life. I'm actually one of the most indecisive person. Like at the restaurants, my friends hate me, absolutely hate me. They'll be like, have you decided what you want? And I'm like, yep. And then the waiter will come and I'll be like, right, so can you help me? And it hasn't changed. My friends, my close uni friends, I love them to bits. They're like, Sabs, you have not changed. I'm like, but they're like, how are you like at work? You can completely like, like you butcher things and you can get things done, and you're so like, and I go, because it's almost like I won't say it's a different persona, but it's almost like I can function because it's like 1,000 tasks to do. And then when it comes down to like your personal, it's like I haven't fully grasped or like got there yet. I know where certain strengths are, and I've done like therapy, like going into it, but I need to look into that a little bit more, because I agree, it's kind of understanding how, like, give me a simple task and I will struggle. So certain things I can't do,
Yeah.
but I'm one of those people
Under
who,
pressure, it's easy.
yeah,
When there's not pressure, it's like, I don't know what to do. It's what, options paralysis.
it's such a fascinating one. I mean, I come from a somewhat of a large family. I'm one of 5, 4 sisters and 1 brother. And my sisters will say, because I mean, they're the ones that had the kids, they're like, you're like a child. So they'll watch me with their kids and like, we get tired watching you. And I'm like, I don't know where I get it from, but I'm always dancing with the kids or doing something because I feel it almost I think I'm a child at heart. So when I'm with them, like the adults during Christmas time are on the table chatting, I'll be with the kids just doing something like, what's the next technology? Let's learn this dance routine. I got 2 left feet. Let's do this, or what's it? And I'm just fascinated by the consumption of like what is out there, because I'm generally I'm a bit like a sponge. I don't know if you find this as being having ADHD. Is kind of, I'm always like, I want to learn more. I
I'm
want
a
to know
s-
what's
I
next.
want to learn more, but I'm a sponge for things that are interesting. The moment something gets boring, it's done. I don't care anymore. It's like I'll skip to the end, like with everything, and that's how I am. So one of the biggest questions that I had for you is for a project that is in Web3, that has a product and they're trying to get the most like attention, the most, I guess, conversions in the end. What do you think is missing, or like what advice or recommendations do you have for them? Because it's very tough. There's a very broad range of things. There's a lot of things that are similar to other things, but like, how do you feel a Web3 product can stand out? Um,
Yeah. So there's a few different things. So one thing I find, and I'm not going to mention names, it's just generically based on my experience, is I think what's really key is having consistency across a product. So let's say you have a product and you want to launch to market. Doesn't always mean you need to launch straight away because you've got your competitor that's launched. Sometimes it's actually worth waiting a little bit so you have that strategy right. So I think what happens is that an element of fear usually comes in when you're like, oh, well, that company's done it, and oh, everyone's talking about them, and now we're going to be seen as copying. If you have a great product, it will succeed regardless. There's always going to be a user for it. When we talk about mass adoption and wanting to, market for a bigger audience, how do you get that? One of the key things is it's not a case, like I said, it's not about just having a viral video or having a like. It's about building trust. It's not going to come overnight. You're not, if any marketeer goes to you like, right, I'm going to get you 10,000 K followers in a month. That's not sustainable, right? You need someone who's going to be a repeat buyer or a repeat customer who's going to come back again. And that's where trust comes. So you've got a few ways. If it's quite early adoption, the education is probably the key thing out of anything, is really understanding your audience and understanding where the gaps are, because you're going to have developers who are going to be, I mean, developers are next level in terms of what they understand, and language, even for me, goes over my head. But then you almost have 3 tiers. You've got the quite advanced, you've got the mid-tier who understand but don't fully understand, but then you've got the young adoption people who are like, I want to come in and I'm not fully understand. If you can't create it, I would say, whether you have an asset like a video asset, people want content very quick, and content should work with sound off. So a lot of times people, so I used to educate a lot of agencies when I used to work at Facebook about this. Content needs to be quick and it needs to work sound off and sound on. So most people, I think I can't remember the full data now, but more people now read subtitles even when watching Netflix. People actually don't have the volume on, and most people tend to read subtitles. So is your content, how can I get my one video that I'm explaining this product in Web3, does it work sound off? Does it work universally in terms of language? Like, language should not be a barrier. So if someone didn't have subtitles on, can they understand whether it's through an infographic? The more quickly you can get that, simple messaging, you can bombard people with a lot of messaging. And that's something I always say to people, let's just wait, because you have to build it up in tiers. Think of an onion, right? You got to get them in the beginning, in that middle part. What's the one key message of that product? What's the key KPI of that project? What is that unique selling point? Then you go into the second stage where you kind of create that content and you break it a little bit more. So I always say the education part is a key thing. Having live AMAs is a huge thing, like just getting live AMAs. Having collaboration is another one. I always say don't be fearful of asking, just literally reach out to someone and ask them. If you can get live AMA, just say, look, I want a 5-minute slot, or just even a 30-second slot, you can give me a shout out. You'll get network through that. So if you can get at least even 1 or 2 developers on board, then I would say the next stage on that would be, actually create hackathons. Hackathons are amazing. Do a little bit of an incentive, like, guys, you're going to get this, we'll give you X amount of it, crypto or whatever, whichever entity it is, make them feel, unique, make them feel special. We're only going to get these 10,000 people in. We're going to bring you all together, make them feel valuable, make their voices heard. And I think once you build that trust, depending on what type of product it is, then marketing becomes a lot easier. But if you have anyone come to you and be like, marketing is like, we're going to come in, we're going to make a flashy new website, and that's going to fix the job. Who's going to know the flashy websites out there? Like, a flashy website can be out there. Like I said, I've done UX before. So when I was at Samsung, especially, one of my pet peeve is if I go to a website and I have no idea what that product is and fancy effects are happening, and I'm like, how do I get to the next bit? It frustrates me to the point I would leave a site. So let's say for shopping, I'm a bit of an addict, but sometimes if I'm going for a shopping experience, if the checkout point if the process is so long, I would get so frustrated. Out of principle, I would not even shop with them again. So it's the same with when you're thinking about product and marketing. You have to have the funnel, the marketing funnel. This is why I would say traditional marketing applies across the board, and it's so important. Try not to jump. Remember, you've got to walk before you get there. And if you have that strategy in place and actually stick to the plan, you have all the tools to be successful. I'm not saying that you're going to succeed and get like 50 mil, people. That, let's be realistic in terms of the economy and where you are. But, you can leverage, collaboration, the content. But in the beginning stage is probably your key part, because that's the first time you're going to expose yourself to people. So those people who already have a product out there and be like, we've been trying for a year and, we're not sure. There's ways you can actually rebirth. And that could be from a simple rebrand. A rebrand is usually something that I would say, don't always rebrand for the sake of it, because it's time consuming, because people get familiar. But if a brand is really strong, then usually people get very excited. So I did say I'm not going to talk about a lot of my past projects, but one that I'm proud of is Midnight for IHK. So that came to me for the branding, and my amazing dear friend and designer Richie worked on. And I remember when we were talking about the branding, and I said to him, like, I want people to think of Apple. I want it to be something so amazing that people are like, oh, this is like such a cool piece. I want to wear it and I feel proud of it. And I think I took a screenshot, and when we launched the rebrand, that someone had actually tweeted saying this gives Apple vibes. And I was like, we won, and obviously they've massively succeeded, and Midnight's doing amazing right now. But I don't always recommend rebranding for everything. But there are, like, if there's a business out there that you're struggling for a year and you feel like something's missing, depending on what it is, obviously I'm blindly giving advice here. Usually I would look at it. It could be as simple as repositioning the language. It's repositioning how your communication is. But ultimately, it is communication. It's what's your unique selling point. Stick to something simple and memorable. People are not going to remember a lengthy paragraph, and people want it quick, and they want it now. So I don't know if that helps, but
that helps.
Yeah.
I will say, what you said there is so definitely touched home. So we, one of my projects, we built a website, right? Built a platform. And yeah, that's the thing, is we built this platform and not a lot of people, there's not a lot of traction, right? Because there's so many other things also. So we're actually in that pivot, considering like the kind of a rebrand and that kind of strategic change, but also changing how we actually promote and use the platform. So I appreciate that insight. That was very good. I want to ask these two questions and then I'll let you go because we're really close to the end. But I love this conversation. I would definitely invite you and love to have you back. One, I want to say I recently had Ian Kane and I also had Mauricio over there at Midnight. So both of them were absolute blast. And I think Midnight's doing some amazing things. I think you've done an excellent job there as well, for sure. What I want to ask is the two questions I ask everybody. So one of them is, what is it that you look for when you are doom scrolling on Netflix or like on one of the streaming platforms? What is it that you look for that grabs your attention that then you watch that show?
Okay, so you're going to hate my answer. So reality is, and again, I wish I remember my data on this. I spend more time scrolling than actually watching something on Netflix. And what's really bad, I find, as society is changing and we have so much content, so we think about the ecosystem within Web3, there is so much out there. So a newbie can feel a bit lost and a bit isolated. It's a perfect example with Netflix. Because there's so much content out there, there is too much. So I probably spend a good half an hour, and I will scroll and scroll and scroll to the point I think I've done my time scrolling, and I'm exhausted, and I won't watch something. I mean, I do watch shows, and that, you know, certain shows like I would binge watch. I do miss the old days of, you know, waiting a week. You know, you watch an episode a week, and usually America will have. Normally, I watch American shows, so it'll come on America first. And I think there was like back in the days, it was called LimeWire and things that you can download. No, you shouldn't be doing that, but legally we would. And then you find out, like, don't want to know. The Americans are going to let us know what's happening, so you don't want to get it. So there was an element of less choices, I think, was helpful. But I find with Netflix, I have quite an electric taste of what I watch. I get very emotional. So I like things that make me cry. Happy tears and sad tears. I'm not so much, so whether it's a thriller, I scream and I actually close my eyes a lot of times, but I enjoy watching thrillers. Or whether it's like simple, no-brainer. I always say the 6.0. So if you know about IMDb, you've got, you know, up to 10. I always say the 6.0 are usually a good no-brainer type movies or shows to watch where you don't have to overthink and you can probably scroll on your phone. But I haven't answered your question. I find it's very frustrating I've got all of the streaming services. I spend more time scrolling. So the only thing I would look on Netflix is, you know, when they have the top 10 that's showing currently that's been released or what's global. So basically, it's whatever the world's watching. It's like, oh, if everyone's watching this, this is new. That's the thing that would pull me in. But give me something to find to watch on Netflix, I would struggle. So it's usually what's out there, like the top 10 shows. I think the last show that I watched that was really good was, I think it was with Adam, I think it's his name, Adam Brody, the gossip. He's a rabbi. And I've forgotten his name. So
wait, hold on. Is it the was it like it was a movie about a rabbi who like or a guru?
Yes, it was a movie.
No?
Yes. So he was a
Guru?
rabbi, and
And
I
he
can't remember his name.
he takes advantage of people, that one, or is it a different one?
No,
No. There's a really good. So this is actually like a recommendation, but there's
watch this one.
there's a good movie on Netflix, and it's about like a guru, like who is a like religious leader, but he was like just abusing his power, and it was in India. And then so you have like the common guy that like.
Yes, that's Bikram. That's the Bikram guy. Yeah, Bikram Yoga. Oh, I watched that. That was
good.
He's on the run. Yeah. So no, the other one was from the ex. I think I can't remember it was Blair Waldorf. So she was his. Oh, I can't remember. I'm very bad with names, but I watched that and I binge watched that and I really liked it. So I can binge watch something and watch it. But I'll be honest, I am on TikTok a lot.
Look, dude, my wife drives me crazy because there's this show and it's called like House of the Famous. And then so it comes on, it's like a Latin American show. So it comes on I can't remember, like Telenova, one of the channels. But she watches it and it's like nightly. But so after she watches it, and it's a reality show where the people are in a house, right? All these celebrities are in a house 24 hours a day. You can watch them online. But so after she watches the show, she'll sit there on TikTok and then watch like clips of the same show from like different like angles. And I'm like, dude, you watch this every night. And then, or like we're watching a show on Netflix and then she's watching the clips of it on TikTok. And I'm like, we already watched this. But actually, I had a recommendation that sounds like it would be right up your alley. I like, and we've been getting really deep into like the South Korean shows. Because the stories are great, and it's like when you watch American shows, you kind of like see the direction that it's going. But then with South Korean shows, it's like you think you see the direction it's going, and then it goes left. And it's consistently exciting.
What was the show? I've forgotten the movie that won the Oscar. The first
was it Parasite or no?
Parasite. So I actually watched Parasite by some. a good friend of mine. So he's based in Paris, and he watched it, and then he told me, "Oh, you need to watch this movie.
That was
Like, it's
crazy.
worth watching." So I was like, "Okay." So I remember, like, I found a copy online. I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna say. But anyway, it was a very. I stayed up all night and I watched it, and then I told all my friends, like, "Oh my god, this is like I couldn't explain like my emotions in terms of how beautiful but yet messed up, and like the art direction, the creativity, like just everything from the actors."
It was
And
like so normal. The whole time you're watching it, you're like, okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. And then at the end, you're like, what?
And I always watch I watch a lot of foreign movies. I always watch it in the native language. I don't like things dubbed because I always think you just get a better authentic way.
Yeah.
So I remember watching it, and my friends, no one watched it. I'm like, "Guys, come and watch it." And a year later, it released. And I got so annoyed because I'm like, no one enjoyed it with
Yeah,
me.
but now that it won all these awards, everybody's talking about it again.
Yeah, but my friends are like, "Oh, they're just not." I think they just give up with me. But I do find TikTok. I do learn a lot from it. So when we go back into just like the crypto space, what I find with TikTok and why it's so, I'm not saying TikTok is the way forward, but I do think for Web3, I know that you can't say certain things because, there's only so much you can promote. And I think that's where we struggle within the Web3 space, is like, what can you talk about? Because you can't do paid media on certain things because, it's not legalized. So there is a bit of a strain when it comes down to marketing, because you have to kind of think outside of the box. But what I find especially with TikTok, the algorithm is you can watch your content and come back a month later and it'll serve you part 2. And that's what's really brilliant, because it caters to you as an individual. And I think when we think about like Web3 and we think about crypto, and there's a few people on there that do talk about what's out there and stuff, but it's not done in a way that it's good enough. So I always say reutilize the content you have out there. So kind of what your wife was doing, like rewatching it works because people kind of do want, or people want to hear someone else discuss a clip that you have watched already. And it just feels, I'll be honest, I'm exactly like I would rewatch things like 50 times. And currently with the whole Blake and Justin drama, I'm just obsessed with Candace Owen and all the drama that's coming from America. I'll be honest, it's just crazy. I'm watching more of TikTok. But when we go back to like kind of Web3, what I want to just bring back is the education element, because I still haven't seen anything out there that has stuck out to this day. There is some great content that's been produced, like movies, especially with Bitcoin. Like they've done like some amazing marketing, and obviously they were ahead of the game. Of course, they're going to, but nothing has come out yet where I feel like we have hit it. And that partly is because we're still in that teenager stage. We haven't fully developed as ecosystem. But what I do always say to people is there is a mark that we're missing. So if you've got a YouTube channel, or you have an AMA space, or any sort of interview, just reutilize that, cut it in short content. You can repurpose it in a way, and then you retarget that, and you just post it again on TikTok, and there you go. You've got a whole different audience on TikTok, because TikTok is a complete different audience. You've got a very young generation, a very thriving and hungry generation that want to know. And usually, like I said, I've come back after like a month, and then I'll have something come back and be like part 2, and I'll remember what it is. So it's amazing how our brains will also adapt to the technology in that way. So I do think there is stuff that's missing. Hopefully some of the ban can come off and what you can advertise. But I think there are ways you can be very smart in terms of advertising on a platform like TikTok and still utilize like your traditional YouTube, or, even if we go back even more traditional, like paid media. And, you said about your friend about SEO, and it's true. It's not about the clicks, it's the conversion. Are you converting? Because if you're not converting, it is not a success as much as people say. Because I always say statistics and numbers is the key thing. And I'm fortunate because I think Facebook really drilled that into it was a very, very high, tough environment, but in a very positive way. That's the best way I can describe it. Everyone was wanting to push each other and collaborate, but it was about, end of the day, coming back and proving based on numbers that that's a success. So my mind completely, I think that was my pivotal time in my career where my mind kind of not changed, I think it was in the best way. I kind of became much more strategic and much more data driven. I was always data driven, but it was very much about numbers. like, no, I can't explain it, like express it enough. It's so different. It's all about numbers. No one cares if it's fancy and it looks great. It's really about that conversion. If you've got that conversion, you've got your bonus and you get extra and all of that stuff. So it became similar to, if you think about gamification, oh, my one project did really well and I got a bonus. I want to do the next one and I want to increase more, and then I want to increase more. So if you think about it, gaming and gamification is kind of everywhere. We think about it. We want to perform, we want to do well, we want to excel, and we want to go to the next level or go up our career. But like, again, I can go into like 50 different things, but I do this, by the way. I can talk about so many
good.
Yeah.
You're good. I love it. And I feel like you've identified like a niche right there in TikTok that's missing. Is like there are a lot of things on TikTok that are educational about, like, you know, some phenomenon in your stomach, you know, some kinds of illness, some kinds of regular scientific thing, nanobots, literally anything. But what is really missing is that we need Web3 education, right? We need like very short form, high impact Web3 education, like simplifying and normalizing the ideas and concepts around like NFTs, what blockchain is, some of these regular concepts. What is staking? What is liquid staking? Right? What is shielded and unshielded transactions? All those kinds of things need to be really hit on a very high caliber, amplified level on TikTok. This is something that all the blockchains should honestly probably come together to make a standardized blockchain education that is literally social media hitting all of the time. But the last question is one of my favorites because I'm a foodie, and you can hear my little fur children outside making noise. But is, if you could go anywhere in the world and eat anything, what are you eating and where are you going and what is that experience like? Right? You said that you struggle with deciding things, but is there anything that comes to mind that's like you either enjoyed it already or that you have fantasized about going to experience that you haven't yet?
Okay, so can I say two? Just
Yes.
because, okay.
We'll let it slide this time, but not next time. Next time it'll only be one.
So only because one I'm still craving for since I was in the States last year, and that's Mexican food. So UK, we don't do the same type. I'm craving the corn tacos, like the shredded beef one with the chili thingies. I'm actually, my mouth's watering as I'm saying this. I've been craving this since, because we don't really have the same. Like my Mexican friend even said this, like UK does not do the same. I do think we do have amazing food, but I'm craving that. I think a friend recommended to do Los Tacos in. I think it's at Los Tacos in New York, and oh my gosh, I died when it was amazing. So that's one thing I'm craving. So that's a craving thing. But where I see myself is one country that I've gone. So I'm talking about a place that I've been, is Japan, and I see myself having tons of sushi and then having a nice miso bowl of soup and then katsu curry. I am a massive foodie. I eat like no tomorrow, and I think people get surprised. I have the biggest sweet tooth.
Yes.
And it's really bad. I snack, like I would have a chocolate bar with a cup of tea, like past midnight. I know this is all the stuff like a health expert would say it's really bad, but I feel my high energy just makes me like burn metabolism. But yes, so the Mexican, because I'm just craving it. I'm dying to like go back to the States just because I don't think we do it the same. And then my place of where I would want to go back is Japan. I absolutely love Japan. I think when we talk about technology as well, I know China is like massively big with the crypto space. Japan like blew my mind. Like Akibara, for those that have been or haven't been, I would say those people who are gamers, when you come out that station and look, it literally feels like you're in a gaming, like in an actual gaming studio. I can't explain it because I just remember there was just neon lights and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is next level. So I would love to go back and then go have tons of sushi, because the sushi is next level there, and katsu curry.
I love that. That's fantastic. And that's exciting. Yeah, my brother went to Japan a little bit ago and he was saying it was awesome. It's one of those places. He's one of those I can't remember what the word is, but he's an anime dork, like one of those anime nerds. But there's like
that.
There's a word. There's a word for it. It's like a I don't know, like a dweeb. I can't even remember what it is, but there's a word, and he loves it. And he always wanted to go, so he went. He sent me a picture of they have like a Gundam tower, like clock tower, which is like the mech robot. Anyways, loved it. Had a great time. I would love to go to Japan. I want to see all of the stuff out there, the Forbidden City, so many different interesting things. Excellent choice. Excellent choice. There's a show on Netflix called the Soju Rhapsody, where they're talking about like the cultural aspects of soju and like how that came about.
I need to watch
But they
that.
talk about food. Yeah, they talk about food and everything. It's not translated though.
No, I think, I don't know if it's the same thing, but did they make kimchi? Like went to a village and made kimchi. I did watch, I don't know if it's the same one, but there was one and also wasn't translated, but they were showing the art of making kimchi and the process of it. And they went to a village.
It could be. I love it. I love all that stuff. Also, the movie the show that I wanted to recommend, if you haven't seen it on Netflix, is It's Okay to Not Be Okay. That was the first, and I'll send you all these, but It's Okay to Not Be Okay was like the first South Korean sort of like drama or K-drama that me and my wife watched, and then like we started it and then we just like binge watched it, and then like we were both crying, and it was, you know,
it's on my list because I think I started watching it and then I paused it because I wasn't paying attention, and I have to watch it in the native language. So the other one for me, if you watch, you probably watched it with your wife already, is Crash Landing on You.
Yes, that's a good one as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God. They apparently got married in real life, so it's even much more of a special.
Oh, that's crazy. I'm going to have to tell my wife about that. I was going to say there's another one we watched recently that we really loved, and it's called Trauma Code. Trauma Code is literally like a superhero action movie, but it's all around like a trauma unit in a hospital, and you have this super cool doctor who just is really trying hard to save everybody, and the bureaucracy is trying to stop him.
Okay.
So it's kind of like House mixed with like Superman or Spider-Man, like one of those Marvel movies. It's like a mix between House and one of those action movies. So it's a good one. Highly recommend.
I think I'll start with It's Okay to Not Be Okay.
It's so good. It's so good. It's probably my favorite. To be honest. Could only watch it once, but it was probably my favorite. But all right. So Sabina, this has been an absolutely excellent conversation. I've stolen a little bit more of your time than what I'd asked for. I appreciate you for that so much. And very soon I will have this up, probably next week. And I'll make sure to tag you on it on Twitter. And thank you so much for joining me. What are the final thoughts and last things you'd like to say for everybody watching?
Well, I'll say since we're talking about Web3 space, for those projects that feel that they're, I guess, drowning against other entities or projects that probably have more funding and stuff, is stay true. And, you know, a lot of it is also to do with luck. I think people don't realize this. It's the luck and time. So keep powering through. You know, reach out. I think that's the other thing. Don't be afraid to reach out, even if it's not within the same ecosystem. And you will be surprised. There are so many people out there that are willing to give time. I know time is a commodity, and usually people don't have the time. So reach out, share those projects, tweet about it, share it to me. I mean, I'm happy to share and even read stuff. I'm just excited. We're just hearing about projects, and like I said, people share projects with me, and I just read them, and I'm just fascinated, and I love this space. And I keep saying the only what I find different within Web3 and Web2 is I feel with Web3 it feels like a family. Maybe it's slightly dysfunctional at times, but I feel like there is a family unit, and I can't explain that electricity of that because it's so different within the Web2 community. You don't get that. It's a very can be a very cutthroat space, whereas Web3 is something so unique. So let's hold on to that. That's unique, that's special. Let's try and collaborate and be a bit more nice and kinder to each other. We're all trying to, go for that one thing, which is a decentralized world. We want to own our own assets, and a win for one entity is a win for all of us.
I love that. Thank you so much, Sabina, and thank you so much for your time. I hope to have you back, and I'm excited to see what other big adventures that you go on and hear about them. So we'll have to bring you back on when you have some exciting announcements and things. Thank you for your time. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.